Hey everybody. I wanted to talk with you all today about a topic that is close to me. I wanted to give you guys a brief touch on my mushroom experiences. This video is going to be for educational purposes only. Um, I just wanted to put this out there. I know that there's been a lot of plant medicine suppression in the past, a lot of stigmas against it. People don't really want to come forward and talk about this kind of stuff because of fear of, what it might bring, how people are going to look at them or all this kind of stuff. But I also know that the narrative around this has been changing a lot. Like 5 years ago, you know, 8 years ago when I first started um, researching this kind of stuff. Actually, at this point, it would have been, yeah, about 8 years ago, 9 years ago when I first started looking into what it's like to be on mushrooms in preparation for my first trip, which I took several years before actually deciding to finally follow through with. There wasn't a lot that you could find. I mean, there was a lot of stuff with Terrence McKenna, one of the pioneers in this field, but there wasn't a whole lot out there. Not a lot of people were putting their stuff online. Now, when you type it into YouTube, you're going to find a bunch of different people talking about their experiences. And I've always kind of wanted to record my experiences, not necessarily like in the act, but going back and doing a review on them for myself. But now I've decided that I'm going to do that and then put them out there for everybody else to see. I think it is an interesting topic. I think people have a lot of interesting experiences that they share. And I think it would be good to add this to the pool of information that's out there and available. And I'm curious to know, experiences for the rest of you guys if you have had any um, experiences relating to this. So I am now definitely an advocate for plant medicine use. I have only done magic mushrooms or psilocybin mushrooms myself, um, and I do know that it's not for everyone. Uh, Not everybody is in the right mental space for it. They're not maybe prepared, or they don't even need it. It's not. It's just not for everybody. But I do think that there is a lot of benefits to be gained, and now we're getting a lot of science to back it up. Treating patients of PTSD and other stuff like that. Addictions and whatnot. There's been a lot of new medical science that has come out to support its beneficial uses. Um, Myself, uh, I've done mushrooms five. I've taken five sizable doses. My first trip was around 2015. My last trip was 2018. Now, I've done five sizable doses and I've microdosed a few times. And although I do enjoy microdosing because of the feeling that comes with it, and the basically the benefits of microdosing, I don't really want to do it all the time. It's not my thing. That's definitely for some people. I definitely got more out of the use of mushrooms by taking larger doses. Uh, Now, the the experiences that I've had, I'm gonna put some videos out here for you guys. I'm gonna do three more videos detailing three specific trips of my 5 times of taking mushrooms. Uh, all of my 5 trips um, basically were centered around the same dosage. One of those trips, the dosage was split, so I did take a smaller dose, and it was with a close partner of mine, and uh, so that was a very personal experience. So I'm not going to be documenting that one, but I did want to talk about it a little bit because that dosage was split. Now, for the other four uh, uh, experiences that I had, one of those was dramatically less, and the one that I'm talking about is, I'm not going to be detailing this one in the 3 videos to follow, but I wanted to talk about this kind of balance here of what you'll find if you do some research in this field is called set and setting. Now, the 3 mushroom trips that I will be detailing were, all of my doses were um, 3.5 grams or an eighth of an ounce. And they were all done, like I ate the whole thing, all at once, or like half of it and then waited 10 minutes and then had the rest of the half um, as just straight up mushrooms. I didn't grind them up or have them with food or anything like that. I just ate them as they were. And, they take about a half hour, 45 minutes to kick in. And all of this was done at a friend's cabin out in the woods. So it was a really good location. I had good people with me. And I will go through the details of those trips later. And those trips were really significant for me. Now, the other two trips, the one where I still had an eighth of an ounce, I still had the 3.5 grams, but it was very diminished because of my location. And the other trip I had that was with my partner was a split dose, right? We had the same eighth of an ounce, the 3.5 grams, but we split it between the two of us. Now, I wanted to touch on this briefly because this is kind of a glimpse into the idea of set and setting, right? I had a split dosage with my partner, and we had an amazing experience together. We had an amazing time. It was very beautiful. And that experience was more intense than when I took the 3.5 grams for myself and then had an experience where I was with a couple of good friends down in town. We decided to go through Lithia Park here in Ashland, Oregon. We decided to go for a walk. And just being around all the people and out in the busyness of the world, this really kept my high down. It really kept a cap on everything. And this is what was interesting to me. Sights and everything like that was way more beautiful. Going through the park was wonderful. It was a super lush green forest. And just a beautiful time. But the inner aspects of this trip were incredibly diminished. And that's really what I was after when I did all of my other trips. I wanted it needed to be something internal, more or less. I wasn't really interested 100% in the, oh, what am I going to see, trippy visuals and shit like that. That wasn't really important. It was the inner work, the shadow work that comes with doing this kind of stuff if you take it seriously. If you want to enhance your time at a rave or a party and take some mushrooms, yeah, it's going to do that. You're also going to be a lot more susceptible to negative experiences. And with a lot of people around, it's a lot harder to control, your set and setting. So I just wanted to touch on that because that was really important. Taking 3.5 grams versus taking half as much. The larger doses wasn't as effective because of the location and what was going on. Taking half as much with someone that I am close to, and in a place that was much more calm and isolated from the world, was a lot more intense. So now I'm not going to go into any of those as far as in-depth details, but I just wanted to touch on that. Set and setting are important. Who is with you? Where are you? And where are you mentally? And I think a lot of this plays into the next part, which is good trips versus bad trips. I personally have never had a bad trip. I had that one trip that I just explained that was very minimal and rather boring in that sense, and uneventful. And I did have a trip that was pretty intense that started to go bad, and that was because of who was around me and what I was experiencing with their emotions and what was happening. And just some action of removing myself from that group and going to another location changed all of that. And so a good trip versus a bad trip, for me, mentally, I was in the right space each time that I did these trips, with, the slight possible exception of my last trip. I was still in a good space, but I wasn't at my best. And as far as who was with me, that kind of played the biggest role. Now, I know that that's not true for everyone. And I want to distinguish, too, a bad trip versus feeling fear and anxiety. My first trip, I definitely felt a little bit of fear, which I had waited probably 2 years of doing just a bunch of research before I actually did any mushrooms at all. Maybe even longer. It might have been like 3 or 4 years that I had thought about it and never did anything. And then eventually, when I did it, I definitely had a lot of anxiety building up to it. And on my very last trip, I had a moment at the end of my trip that just scared the life out of me, dude. It was a truly terrifying experience. But I don't classify that as a bad experience. It wasn't a bad trip because it was my perception of what was going on that made it bad. And looking back on it, I would have definitely, if I could go through it again, I would attempt to alter how I was going through it because, again, it all had to do with my perceptions. And that's one of those things is that mushrooms play a lot on your perceptions. They use your perceptions, they expand your perception. And this is one of those things. You might feel some fear, you might feel anxiety. You're going to feel a lot of euphoria. I definitely felt euphoria throughout all of my trips. You have expanded perceptions. Things click, things that you weren't otherwise making connections on. You see things in a broader sense and you understand connections between things a lot better. And in that, you also experience, at least I did, was a larger connectedness with all of these things. So seeing things happen, I understood why they were happening, and I could see more of a proper reflection between them and myself. So when I experienced a feeling, I understood why. Most of it, it came with a level of understanding because of this expanded perception, and you feel this larger, greater sense of connection with everything. Um, Now that's just kind of the general overview of those feelings that were experienced throughout those trips. Some of the major takeaways. Um, all of these trips took a lot of processing time afterwards. The first time I did mushrooms was around 2015. I think I did mushrooms again a year later. And somewhere in between there, I don't remember if it was between the first and second trip that I'll be documenting for you guys, or between the second and third, that I had that experience where I was down in town. And but it was somewhere in there. It was either before or after my second trip. Um, but I don't really count it as far as my major trips that I experienced because it was so minimal, honestly. And the trip that I had with my significant other was, um, I think, between my second trip and my third trip. And I took 2 years before doing mushrooms again. Aside from that experience with my partner, and that's just because of the time that it takes to kind of analyze and integrate and reflect on, and then become ready again to do it again. Because when you go through these experiences, you make a lot of connections. You see things very differently, and if you just ignore it and jump right back into it again, you haven't learned anything, right? You got to take time. It's like the after game review. You got to look back and see what happened, why were you feeling the way that you felt, and analyze your emotions and what you were going through at that time and how you feel about it now, and allow time to pass so that you can come back to it with a just a greater level of understanding and a kind of a new revised um, insight on the matter. Now, and again, my last trip was in 2018. It's the end of 2022. So that was over 4 years ago. And there's a good reason that it's been so long, because that one was my most intense trip, and it definitely took a long time to process and took a long time for me to come back to the mindset of thinking, oh, am I even going to do this again, because of how intense it was. Now, again, with it being that intense, I don't classify it as a bad trip, um, because it wasn't a bad trip. It was a great trip. Uh, it's just that sometimes, depending on where you're at, right? I didn't take any more on my third trip than I did my first trip or my second trip. It was the same, but it was where I was at mentally and what I was ready to see and what I was ready to experience, and that really kind of set the standard for where was I going to go with it. How high was I going to get and with it, and how was it going to affect me. And so again, this points towards the importance of set and setting. So, again, I'm not going to get into the details in this video. I just wanted to do a general overview and put this out there for you guys. Be on the lookout. I'm going to be releasing 3 more videos, each one detailing my major trip experiences. And I'm going to just try and walk you through the best I can. Now, it's been a while. Keep in mind, this was 2015 to 2018, and I took no record of these in the moment. So, this has been a recent project of I just wanted to get these on camera. I wanted to get them recorded for record keeping purposes, and then I wanted to put them out there for educational purposes for anybody that's looking for any kind of guidance or things that they might be able to expect. Everybody's trip is going to be different. That's one of the big things when you trip with people. Um, you guys might be in the same exact place. You might have taken the same exact amount of mushrooms and the same type of mushrooms. It doesn't matter. You're going to have your own experience. So the more information you have about other people's experiences, the more you're going to be prepared for whatever might come your way. And that was definitely the case with me. I had some good friends that gave me a lot of good resources to prep me before my first experience, and it was invaluable. I used some of the resources every ounce of the way through all of my trips, from gauging my highs to just watching myself as far as not falling into a bad trip and falling into that negative spiral. Um, so, anyway, that's pretty much it. Please let me know your thoughts, comments. If any of you have had any experiences, please let me know. Again, be on the lookout. I don't know when I'll be releasing those videos, but they'll come out soon. Um, and I will tell you more about that later. Sweet. Have a good one. Bye.